As a Canadian, whether you like the game or not, hockey will come into your life in some capacity. Whether you played it as a child, grew up watching it as a family tradition, it is in our blood, some more than others. So buckle in for a full 3 periods as we chat with Ottawa Senators General Manager Pierre Dorion. So welcome to episode 44 of Living Your Life with Leanne Lang, the podcast brought to you by Extension Marketing. And of course, for more information, you can always head to extensionmarketing.com. So I'm going to be pretty clear. This isn't about power plays or penalty kills or trade deadlines or the trade or the signing of certain players or the X's and the O's of this game. This podcast is really about hockey as a way of life, how it is ingrained in us and what people are looking for, what this is truly all about. And we're getting it from someone whose life has really revolved completely, even as a child, around hockey. So Pierre, I'm so happy to have you here.
It's great to be here.
I'm very interested to see where this chat goes.
Yeah, me too, actually.
And I got to say right off the bat, I give you full credit because a lot of the media interviews that you have done over the last couple of months, not always fun.
No, the subject matters haven't been always a lot of fun to discuss, and sometimes it's been stuff that you want to talk about. Other things you have to talk about because they're hockey related and Ottawa Senators related, but this might be a bit different. I'm looking forward to it.
I love this. This is great, and I think what I appreciated is that there was an honest kind of excitement to maybe kind of discuss more things that are a little bit more personal and a little bit more for people to understand kind of where people are coming from when they're put in these kinds of positions.
Yeah, and I got a girlfriend, I got kids, I live a life, I drive around Ottawa, people honk at me sometimes people give me a certain finger, so it's all a matter of living here and doing what you need to do and just living a day-to-day lifestyle in Ottawa, but I can tell you I really enjoy it.
Okay, and this isn't something that's new to you. You have grown up around the game, even as a child. This was part of your family life. Your dad, it was a scout. So kind of take us through, like, where was childhood? What was that really like for you? And were you an athlete? Did you love playing sports? What was that like?
Obviously, just the last part of your question, obviously, I've always been an athletic person, really played all kinds of sports through high school, played football for our high school team. I was a pretty good badminton player, played a lot of tennis as a kid. Obviously played hockey also. I'm trying to think what
okay, where was home?
Home was always Orleans.
People need to understand, like, born and raised here.
Born and raised here, except for when I was in grade 6, that would have been 83, 84. We lived in North Bay. My dad took a job with North Bay Centennials as an assistant GM. That didn't work out. We came back to Orleans. I lived on Innes Road growing up when there was no Fallingbrook, no Queenswood Heights. It was big fields with mounds of groundhogs. That was the backyard, actually, essentially.
I can see it.
Yeah,
It's funny because when you grow up in the city and you see how it evolved. I remember the construction of Hunt Club. Like a Hunt Club Road, like that was farmland, So when you talk about kind of growing up on Innes, now you see box stores like lined up for miles, but it was very different growing up back there.
Yeah. So I've been in Ottawa my whole life, but it's something that I'm so proud of being from here. I'm so proud of how this city's grown over the last 40 years. 40 years. So I did a lot of sports growing up. My father got in coaching fairly early. I remember I was a young kid. I used to go see the Vanier 72s play. And then he was a coach with the Gloucester Rangers. He always coached with a gentleman by the name of Lauren Woods, who is probably the person that my father respected the most, for what I can remember. Lauren was also a CFL referee.
So hockey.
Yeah.
And CFL.
Yeah.
You can't get more Canadian than
that.
No.
That was the gentleman that one of my dad's best friends. And then he was with Central Scouting for a long time. He was the head scout of Central Scouting, then went with the Leafs before he passed away. So I was always around the game of hockey.
Okay. you have fast forwarded it like way too much. So I'm going to come back to some of the topics that you just mentioned. But you had said, okay, so through school you're playing football and then badminton.
Yeah.
And then, like, I mean,
and hockey.
And hockey. Like, you had your foot in a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you had hoped to truly excel at, or you liked just being an all around kind of just trying out for teams?
I wasn't very good at. I remember our high school football team. I think when I was in grade 13 or 12, I'm trying to forget. No, grade 12. We didn't win a game, and I was a quarterback, and I was awful. And our hockey team was good. I played that in grade 13. I hadn't played hockey for a few years. Just wasn't enjoying it as much. And that was a lot of fun. I remember we went to Europe. I went to Gardner High School. We went to Europe in our grade 13, and we were 18 at the time. So I remember the teachers letting us, giving us a bit more freedom. And one time, I think it was I forget where in France, we went out, the 6 guys in grade 13, and we came back a bit late with a few more drinks in us than probably we should have had it in us, but the teachers were really good about it. So.
Did you have a game to play the next day?
No. We would have never done that. So even at that young age. So I knew I wasn't going to be an NHL hockey player. I knew that I was never going to play probably sports professionally. So my dad always instilled in me to go to university. So I went to Ottawa U for 3 years, and after that, I found my career path into the world of hockey.
Okay, but you're talking, as you're growing up, your dad is a scout.
Mm-hmm.
So is your dad home often?
No.
I mean, let's be realistic, and we're getting into kind of, you followed a very similar career path. Scouting isn't being home every night at 6 o'clock for dinner.
No, that's probably the biggest downside. Is when you're a scout, it's probably the least glamorous job in the business, because you're gone and you're doing all the legwork. You barely get any credit for all the work you do, and you set the foundation for the team a lot of times, and you're never home. I always tell my daughter is going to turn 17, and I think I've missed 12 or 13 of her birthdays, just because, not as many in the last few years, but just because you're always in the month. She's going to turn 17 in February. So it's just the way that it is, because you're always on the road.
But your dad was always on the road.
Yeah, my dad was always on the road.
Was dad missing birthdays? Was dad missing every...
Dad was missing hockey games when I was playing. Dad was missing birthdays. Dad was missing family events. It was just... It's almost sad to say, but it got to be the norm, which was unfortunate, because you miss your father growing up. You miss the father-son moments that you wish you could have had. So it's a part of the job that's not a lot of fun, and it happens with a lot of families that their parents travel for work.
Did you resent it a little bit? Like, did you resent that he was out trying to look at other young men playing this, the sport? Like, and wasn't there for you?
No, because I understood that was the job. From an early age, I was able to understand that was the job that he was in. Obviously, he was really good at balancing it out, because when he was home, he'd try to give as much time to his kids as he could. But at the same time, at times it got to be more difficult. It always got to be more difficult around February or March, when you hadn't seen him starting in September all the way to that point in time. So that's what made it a bit more difficult.
Were you asking him at that point, like, hey, Dad, like, when you're out at these games, like, what are you looking for? Like, are you asking him questions even as a young boy to understand his job, or what made him such a good scout? Actually,
that's a great question. I did a lot of that. I'd always ask him, what are you looking for in players, and what are you scouting for? And I remember always having a great conversation when he just joined Toronto. He'd worked for Central Scouting. He was their head scout for many years. And we had maybe, I don't want to say an hour conversation, maybe 30 minutes or 40 minutes. I always remember about the distinction now that he was going to have to, before he just ranked the players, now he was going to make selections to make the Maple Leafs better.
Right. Okay. So when you're working for Central Scouting, which is, he was head of Central Scouting, he was looking broad spectrum.
Yes.
And combine and figuring out which of these players that all the scouts had pretty much seen, and ranking as to where they were going to fall in the lineup.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And when he went with the Leafs, well, then he was their chief scout there, and then he was making selections to make the Leafs better.
So when you're asking him about the Central Scouting, what questions are you asking then, and then how did they differ once he was in a different position?
Well, at that point in time, I'm trying to remember how many teams there were, but it was a lot of times at Central Scouting was, if there were 21 teams or 26 teams or whatever it was. He goes, I'm just trying to find players and list them and how we feel is the best order that they'll play in the NHL one day. There was no specific needs, whoever was going to be the best player. While with the Leafs, it was more about, we might have specific needs and how at that time the Leafs weren't very good, so how to build that team into a better team.
Okay, so when you ask him, what are you looking for in a player? What were those answers? Because if you're saying even now, remembering this conversation that many years later, what did you find interesting about it?
My father was really high on character and unselfish players. As much as you can have all the talent in the world, if you don't have those traits, it's tough to succeed in a lot of things in life. And for him, that was always important. But then it always came back to, I remember in that conversation, I said, well, do you ever say a player will never play? He goes, very rarely, because you never know how much a player can improve. Now, 99 out of 100 might not improve as much, but that one guy that you thought you could have said will never play, well, he improved and worked at it so much that he became a player. So it kind of like gave me perspective on things that you never should eliminate someone so early in the process.
Like the underdog.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you appreciate the underdog?
Oh, I love the underdog. There's something to be said about the underdog, the one that no one gives any credit to, no one thinks will ever play one day, and their effort and their ability to just thrive under difficult circumstances can make him have a chance to play one day.
So when your dad is talking to you about looking for that unselfish player or the character of a player, how is he distinguishing that? How is he able to see that from the stands looking down on the ice?
Well, I think it comes from being able to read the game, and I think it's something that I was very fortunate to be gifted, and through conversations and through learning and through observing that obviously unselfish players is a player that is willing to make the right pass at the right time, someone who makes the right play. I think it has some hockey sense to do with it, but at the same time, it's a guy on a 2-on-1 who looks to pass to the other guy and not take the shot that goes over the net. So there's always it's always framing it in every different situation.
Like the context of...
Yes, the context
of it. So you have these conversations with your dad. Did he ever come home and kind of say, I found this gem, or like was there? There
were conversations like that, not into specifics, but you could tell there sometimes, because at a certain point I was still in high school, so you're doing homework a bit later, or you're in university, and I went to Ottawa U, so I'd come back home and you're doing homework late or whatever, and you come back home from a game in Montreal or somewhere in Kingston, and you end up talking about the game, and not they were specific on players' names, but just I saw this one guy tonight that I didn't see this earlier in the year. So there were great conversations to have. You
go to Ottawa U. Mm-hmm. What did you study?
Social sciences.
Okay, you took a second there to be like, what did I study?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you know heading in that you needed to just get some university classes in there and get this degree because you knew what you wanted to do? Like, at what point did you realize that you might be following in your father's footsteps?
I probably end of high school into university. For him, it was very important that I went to university. He goes, no matter what you're going to do in life, you have to go to university. And whether it was university, college, whatever, he goes, you have to do something post-secondary. So after I finished university, which I haven't graduated, I'm one course away from graduating. And
you're one course away.
Yeah, I'm one course away from graduating. What happened was I was doing that course in the summer. I had a hard time with a certain course at Ottawa U, and then so I just dropped it. So in the summer I was taking it, and that's the summer my father passed away, and I never got a chance to finish it.
So you're a credit shy.
Yeah, I think
it's a course shy.
Yeah, a course
of the social studies.
Yeah,
right, like your certificate.
Yeah.
Can I ask what the class is?
No, because I took a different class, and I forget what it was. Now we're going back a long time, but.
You were finishing though, and then you had something lined up, because at that point, did you know after kind of summer that you had a job?
Yes,
that you were going to be getting into?
Yeah, my father told me that Montreal wanted to interview me, and I started with them part-time, and then I started working for Montreal part-time in September, and my father passed away at the end of June, and I was completing the course was I think from a May to, or was it a June to, I forget exactly.
It was over that.
It was over that time.
So when I was looking at, when I was going over your file, it's amazing what you find on the Google machine. I saw that your father had passed. So he passed in 1994. Yes. And so I, looking at numbers going, gosh, you were really young.
Yeah, I was 22 years old at the time.
And I was like, God, we had such parallels, because I had really, you were just starting into your career. For me, I had just started. I lost my dad, very similar, in June also of a heart attack. Yours dad was a heart attack.
Yes, it was.
He was I thought my dad was young. My dad had just turned 57 the day before. Your dad was just shy of 50.
Yeah, 3 weeks shy of 50.
Where were you? Like, where did you get the call? Like, this is such an unexpected.
That I remember like it was yesterday. We went to a house party. I ended up going to my friend Al's place. I was sleeping in the basement, and I told, I think I told my mom or my brother at the time, I'm going to sleep at Al's place. And I could hear the phone ringing, like starting at 3 or 4 in the morning, or 2. I don't know. The phone kept on ringing through the house, and it was my brother trying to reach me. Back then, this was 1994. Cell phones and texting and wasn't going on. And I kept hearing the phone, and it kept on ringing. Like, it felt like it rang for hours. And at about, I forget what time, it was 4. I was wearing contact lenses that I didn't put on. My brother said, Dad's at the hospital. He didn't tell me that he passed away. So I said, okay. I said, what hospital? It was Montfort Hospital. I got in the car, just drove like a madman. I got there, and I started talking to him, and it's one of the surreal things. He was passed away, and I was talking to him. I just thought he was kind of like sleeping, or something had happened. And that's when it clicked that he passed away. So it was a tough moment. Very tough moment.
I'm feeling like I had like a similar call, like one, like,
yeah,
very similar to that, like something, like something happened to Dad, you got to get to the hospital, and it was kind of like you get there, and then there's just this, they're just lying there, right?
Yeah.
And their body's still warm, like there was still a warmth, and then and you're so young to grasp this. Like, was this sudden? Like, had there been issues? No. And where was he? Where was your dad when this happened?
He was in bed beside my mom. It was around midnight or 12:30. He was the honorary president of a local sports tournament. My mom said the last things he said to him, he goes, I figured out the game of golf, which every man thinks he has when he's played a good round of golf, or every person, I should say. And and then he had the heart attack in the bed. The ambulance came, and then I think from about 1 o'clock on, I think my brother, or maybe it would have been about from 2 o'clock on, I think my brother was trying to reach me. And I remember I was at Al's place, and the phone, I could hear the phone ring in the house, and I was downstairs in the basement, and I finally went and picked it up.
Your mom, I mean, so it was a good marriage, like.
Oh, it was a great marriage.
And so it was so young. Was it? Do you look back and go, was it the lifestyle? Was it just a heart disease? Was just
no. Heart attacks are prevalent in our family. On my grandmother's side, I think she had 2 brothers that died of heart attacks. I think her dad died of a heart attack. So my dad was an only child. He's had a heart attack. So.
Oh God, Pierre, I'm sorry, but it doesn't are you
doesn't
ever,
look good for me.
are you ever, I mean, and you're going through, let's be realistic, when they say stress is a massive indicator, like, are you ever kind of going through some scenarios like over the last couple months, and you're thinking, this is not good for my heart right now?
Yeah, no,
does that, I mean, it has to cross your mind.
Yeah, I can tell you a few times over the last 6 months, it's definitely gone through my mind. But one thing I've really put an effort into, especially I'd say in the last 6 months, is I really watch my diet much better. I've tried to work out more regularly, but that's difficult to do. I had a stress test a few years ago, an echogram, and I think the stress test I was at 97% or whatever it was.
Have you taken a stress test?
No,
lately?
no. I don't even want to go close to that. I don't even want to go close to that. But you know what? I'm happy, so that I think that helps. I've got the greatest job in the world, I feel like. So stress comes with it, but I think in whatever walks of life you have, I've learned to deal with it, and I don't let much stuff linger, which I think really helps.
That you're able to not allow things to linger. And
I just move on.
They just don't pester you. Like,
no.
That, I think that's huge, and it says a lot about the personality needed, especially for the career choices that you have made. So you don't finish this class after your dad passes away. How is your mom, your brother, like, how is the family coping and dealing with when it's so sudden?
It was tough. I have a brother who's 3 months younger. He's my cousin who became my brother. My mom and his mom were sisters. She passed away when he was 4, so he came to live with us. So I'm 5'11". He's 6'4". At one time, he was about 400 pounds. Now he's closer to 300. So we're totally different, but we've been brothers. So he wasn't his paternal father, but it was his dad. So he took it tough. I have a younger sister that's 6 years younger than me, and she took it tough. But the one that it was the toughest on, I have a 10 years younger brother. And
so he would have been 12.
He was 12. He actually hadn't turned 12 yet. And he took it the toughest. And, you always, like, and, I'd live a lot of my youth with my dad around, at least in the summer.
You had him.
Yeah. He hadn't seen, like, as much as, like, through all these times where he hadn't had him. So obviously he was the one that you always feel the hardest for. Obviously my mom too, she lost her life partner, but you always, the person that you always felt the most for was my younger brother, Mark.
You talk about that because you talk about you had that many more summers of having your dad around, like of having the catch up time.
Yeah.
And your younger brother was robbed of that. And especially too at that age, he was finally kind of able to hang out and talk and build a new relationship.
Yeah.
Did you take on a bit of a fatherly role, or like you were at that point, we're about to embark on your career, right?
Yeah.
You're heading doing work for Montreal.
I wouldn't say a fatherly role because that wouldn't be right. I just tried to be there. But I think my other brother, Chris, really helped Mark more because I was starting to travel more, and it's not like I just didn't have the time to do that. And not that I didn't want to do that, but you always try to be helpful and be around and make sure you can be supportive.
You then head off to take on the job with Montreal, and you're amateur scouting?
Yes.
Okay. You're now sitting in the stands doing exactly what your dad had done. Are you hearing your dad talking to you? Are you?
Yeah, I did. More early on, it was more. The weirdest thing I can explain to you is that at times I felt he was with me, and at other times I'd almost feel he didn't want to be with me because he wanted me to learn by myself. So there are times where you felt that there was some guidance there, and there are other times where you felt you needed guidance that he was probably doing on purpose so you would learn by yourself. So that's, the way I felt at times. And sometimes the best way to grow up in whatever endeavor that you're embarking on is to have some kind of independence and learn by yourself. And I think, there was some kind of balance I felt from divine intervention above that one way or the other.
What were the years like then in scouting for Montreal? Like,
it was fun.
Yeah. You were there a long time.
Yeah. I was there for over 10 years, and it was great. I got to be the youngest chief scouting in the NHL at 26 years old for, one of the most storied franchises in the league, which was a lot of fun.
Why do you think they gave you that? I mean, that's a big position for such a young man. Had you distinguished yourself? Like, had you?
Yeah, I don't know if I distinguish myself, but one thing about how I do things, I always try to outwork anyone else, and I think that might impress them. I think I had a good hockey background, hockey knowledge as far as evaluations. They saw that I was thorough. They saw that I wasn't afraid to give opinions. And sometimes when it comes to a certain time in the draft, you've got to say it's this guy or this guy. I was never afraid to give my opinion, but at the same time, there were times where I think I established that I knew what I was talking about, and that's what they saw in me.
You could make the decision at the.
Yeah.
If it was, you're sitting at that table and you got 10 seconds to pick between this one and this one.
Yeah, yeah. And
you felt you had the confidence to say this is why.
Yes, and ultimately that's helped me make decisions in the position that I am now. Because you have a lot of times you got to make decisions. On trade deadline day, you have 30 seconds to pull the trigger and you say yes or no, and things are moving so fast, and so that's all these things that I've been making decisions since I've been in my mid-20s.
Okay, were there ever ones made young that you look back on now?
Oh my God!
And go, had I known,
yes,
or what I would have said to my younger self.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing of all time, when I see people that change jobs or get fired and say, if I know, I would have done exactly the same. Well, I don't believe in that, because I think we all get better through our mistakes. And
what can you pinpoint one that was a big learning lesson for you?
Probably one of my biggest mistakes in my first year as Chief Scout, we took Eric Chouinard instead of Simon Gagné. And nothing personally against Eric Chouinard. Both players were great people. One turned out to have a great NHL career, and the other one had a marginal NHL career. And it was my first year as Chief Scout of Montreal Canadiens. And that was the choice that we were about to make. Both were French kids from Quebec City, and we ended up making the wrong one, and I made that call.
You were certain about it then?
Oh, without a doubt.
So where does that experience come from? In hindsight, you can see it, but are you in that position again with two kids very similar? What would you have taken from that decision that you look at it differently?
Well, obviously, one had more pace than the other one. One skated better than the other one. Obviously, we thought one was a better goal scorer than the other one, but it turned out to be the other way around. One player probably had a bit more internal drive than the other player.
Which is so key.
Yeah, I know.
That's your underdog that you talk often about.
The underdog and the character, and both players had character, but in a different way. And you learn from that. You learn from that. And ultimately, that probably ended up making some better selections for Montreal as we moved on, or when I was with New York Rangers, that helped also, and with Ottawa ultimately at the end of the day. Yeah.
So you go from Montreal, then you spend a little bit of time with New York Rangers before coming actually to Ottawa, and in a similar position, because there was a lot of scouting that was done for the Ottawa Senators. Yeah. Along this time, you get married.
Yeah.
You have some kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a little break from hockey for a second. Okay, so you're now living a very similar life to your dad.
Yeah.
You found love, you're going to do this, but so how did that all evolve? Because you were pretty young.
Yeah, the toughest part for me was that a lot of my friends, how could I say it? After university, they were with their high school sweethearts or girls they met in university. With my busy lifestyle, it was tough to establish relationships. I'd have some relationships, through high school and through university, but it was tough to maintain them to where you could give the other person as much attention or love or whatever, what they need to make your relationship thrive. So I met my first and only wife to this point. She was working at the bank, and we just always talked when I went there, and
because we like talking to tellers.
Yeah,
there was a time when we would go to the bank and you would talk to the teller. So did you go to the bank more often?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I was going to say you were making more trips than you needed to.
Most likely.
Okay.
Almost being too obvious. And anyways, I had good I used to time it, so I go to her teller, and she used to
Oh,
time
like
it.
you would actually have to count the people. Like there's
Yeah,
3
that
tellers
was,
open.
yeah.
Okay.
And we met. We started dating. It went well. And then we had our daughter Vanessa. We dated for about we started dating in about, was it 2? We had our daughter Vanessa. We started dating in about 2000. Okay. And we had our daughter Vanessa in 2002. We got married in 2003. And we had our son in 2005.
So at this point, you're into this for 10 years into scouting. Yeah. So she kind of knows what she's getting into.
I explained it to her very, very well. Like, this is the lifestyle. And, at the start, when you don't have kids, it's almost fun because she could work from 12 to 8, I think, at the bank. So I could come back late. We could spend the morning a bit together, and then I'd be gone. And but when you start having kids, it's a bit tougher. And, to me, it was just like, are you sure you want to get into this? And she had no problems getting into it.
At this point, do you have aspirations? I mean, as you know, you're moving through the system, and you've gone from Montreal to the Rangers to the Sens. You're in the scouting position. Like, are you thinking, if I stick with this organization, we're going to go to this job? No. So you were content, like you were happy, or you loved what you were doing? A
lot of times our fathers are our heroes. My father, the highest position he ever became was chief amateur scout for the Toronto Maple Leafs. When I got to be that at Montreal at 26, that's what I wanted to be for the rest of my life. And then I just became a scout for the Rangers, and I got hired in Ottawa as chief scout for the Ottawa Senators. And it never dawned on me that I wanted to be director of player personnel or an assistant general manager or even general manager. I was happy where I was, doing what I thought I believed I really enjoyed.
I would say too, because they're two very different aspects to the game.
Mm-hmm. Well, they are.
Would you say? I mean, when you look at the breakdown of how you appreciate the game, and I think this is for anyone in any sport. If you're scouting for NFL kids or you're a baseball scout, right? When you're there, you are ingrained in the game and the plays and how a kid is developing and looking at, as you mentioned, character and if they're a selfless player. It changes drastically when you're then looking at dotting the I's, crossing the T's, the X's and O's, and the financial value of everything. It changes your perspective completely. And were you prepared for that? Like, so I don't want to say lose sense of one side of the game to have to take on another, but there's sacrifice with that.
What I was very fortunate with the Senators is that when I got to be there, it wasn't a big front office staff. And there was Brian Murray, and then Tim Murray was the assistant GM, and we had Brent Flair as director of hockey operations. They let me in on a lot of contract stuff, not negotiations, but contract prep, budgets, especially when Brent left to go to Minnesota 2 years in. And both Brian and Tim really let me learn the business side of it, as far as everything else as far as administration, and that prepared me so much better for when I got to be an assistant GM. Okay,
but at that point, are you going, I don't know, Brian, do I really need to learn all of this? Because I got to go scout a game now. Do I need to be learning this?
At some point, yeah, I did. I wasn't sure I was the type, because you get to a routine that you really enjoy being on the road. You really enjoy what you're doing, even though you're not getting a lot of glory for it. You're really enjoying it, but at the same time, there was a family aspect to it where you knew you'd spend probably a bit more time at home, and that was good. And then I had a good friend of mine, and he said, Pierre, he's a lawyer in Orleans. He's my best friend, Mike, and he said to me, he's got his own business partner. He goes, is this what you want to be remembered at as a scout? He goes, your dad was a scout, and that was great. He's got a great legacy, but don't you feel you can offer more? And that's when I started saying, you know what, I probably can.
Are you offering more to the game? Are you offering more to the team? Or are you offering more to your family? This podcast is brought to you by Extension Marketing. They are a new breed of marketing agency that acts as your virtual marketing department, designing and implementing cost-effective marketing strategies that will grow your business. I can speak to this personally, as I've been using the Extension Marketing team to help me launch and grow my business. Founder Pat Whalen has been a lifesaver for me, a genuine coach, guiding me along the way into uncharted territory. Tell them you're a friend of the show and receive a free 1-hour consultation. Check them out at extensionmarketing.com.
It was more about, are you offering more to the game to a certain degree, but it's more, can you do more to help your team? That was what it was about. And it kind of like, that conversation always struck a chord in me. You know, if you can push yourself to new challenges and you can rise in those challenges, why not try it? You might fail at them, but at least you tried for it.
You have friends like this. Is this Mike
from
Orleans? Who's the lawyer? Yeah. Was it important? Like, did you be able to have a good foundation? You know, I find people when they get to a certain position, right? People are always needing something from them.
That's well said.
Is that well said?
Yes, that's very well said.
Are you grateful for the relationships that you have that were very concrete prior to the positions that you have then maintained for grounding purposes?
Yes. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I have probably the same since grade 11. I went to a private school for boys in grade 9, grade 10 in Cornwall, a little town outside of Cornwall called Somerstown. So I'll just say since grade 11, I probably have the same group of 8 friends that we're still all very close to each other. And that hasn't changed. And for me, it's not Pierre, the general manager of the Ottawa Senators. It's Pierre, the guy that sometimes is a bit immature and a bit crazy and likes to have fun. And what made it so special, I just got to tell you this story. The most heartfelt thing that my friends have ever done for me is they didn't surprise me, but when I got nominated for GM of the Year 2 years ago, they all came to Vegas. And in their way, they all came. And my good friend Mike said, well, we're coming because you'll never get nominated again. And we're coming because you know you're not going to win. And he goes, yeah, and it's Vegas too. So those are the 3 reasons we're coming.
So these kids, these friends from grade 11 stuck with you, have been there.
Yeah, ever since.
That's amazing. Can I just say, like, anytime between like May, June of this year and I don't know, let's say September, did you ever get a text that was like WTF? Like, did you have a couple of those?
I got a few of them. If you need to come and have a few beers at my place, you're welcome. If you need to ever talk. And the good thing about a lot of my close friends, you know, is that I could tell them the deepest secrets of the Ottawa Senators, which I don't do, and I know it would never get anywhere. Sometimes we do need confident, a confidant.
Yep.
And I don't do it, but I know if I ever needed to, I could tell them, and nothing would ever get told.
There's an outlet, I think, for any individual, and to be able to have that it wasn't within, you know, but that there could be, you look at the text and it's like a WTF, and hey, if you need a beer, like it's not going, what are you doing? It's if you need the drink or if you need the beer, I'll sit by.
I have one good friend, JF, he's high up in the government, really high up in the government. And he's always a good sounding board for stuff like that. And he'd text me, you know, if you need some time, we don't need to talk hockey. If you want to talk life, you know, you can come and see me. And, you know,
because you're getting honked at by the car next to you with fingers being, I can't, you know, is it hard to read things? Like, do you read? Are you listening? Like, are you listening to the Team 1200? Are you reading the papers? Like, is it something that you're looking at, or?
I do read the papers. I'm not going to mislead you there. I read both the French and English paper. I used to start by the back section. Now I start by the front section, and I work my way through, which has made me more knowledgeable about what's going on in the world. TSN 1200, it depends. In the morning, I don't. It depends. Some mornings I do.
It depends how your mind is. It based on your mindset that day if you can handle it or not.
I gotta. One thing I learned from Brian Murray, he put country in his car all the time.
Good. I love country music.
And I'm.
Brian Murray listened to country. He was country music.
But the old stuff like the Willie
Nelson.
Nelson.
Like the twangy stuff?
Yeah, the twangy stuff. I wasn't as much, but I love country too, so I got to be careful. But I wasn't as much into the old stuff, but it taught me a lesson that you can't listen to the outside noise and to be affected by it. Like the best story I could ever tell you, not that we want to dwell into hockey, is I remember when we traded for Alex Burrows. For us, we thought it was a character guy we needed to help us in our get to the playoffs and get to the playoff run. And I always remember we were in Tampa Bay, and I was so happy about the trade. Our pro scouts, everyone seemed really happy. Coach was ecstatic about the trade. I'm walking over to the rink, and I'm saying, I'm going to face the meeting. And Brian Morse goes, "Oh, Pierre, it's bad." So what do you mean it's bad? "Oh, you gave up a prospect." I say, "Yeah, but we're going for it. We got a lot of prospects." He goes, "Oh, it's not really well received." I said, "Okay, I'll handle it." And we were in Tampa, so I didn't read the paper for the next 2, 3, 4 days. And then a few days after, we made the Stallberg trade, and Stallberg really helped us get into the playoffs. I think Burrows helped us more when we got into the playoffs. And probably if I would have read what everyone said about Burrows, then probably would have made the Stallberg deal, and I don't know if we would have been able to have as much success as where we went. So
you were grateful for being in Tampa,
yeah,
where hockey isn't front page.
No, I didn't have access to the paper.
Yeah,
I could have went and read it online, but there were so many other things. So to me, I've told that story to a few people, saying you can't let outside noise affect what you're doing. Now, whether it was a good trade, bad trade, whatever it helped us, that's to be debated. Not every move that you make is going to be the best move for the team, but it just gets back to your point that sometimes when you're in position that we're in, where you lead an operation where it's so public that you can't let the outside noise affect you. You have people within that you rely on, and you count, and at the end of the day, you have to make the call, but you can't let the outside noise dictate what you need to do.
You say that a lot of that came from Brian Murray.
Yeah, it did.
This life lesson, at least in this fashion. What else did you take from that? Because there was a lot to that man.
We could probably stay here for another 5 hours. I'll always say the two greatest people I've met in my life are my father and Brian Murray. Brian never got mad at you, never scolded you. He had a great way to give you life lessons. The only time we really got animated was at referees. Sometimes the coaches too, but that's another story. Our own coaches most of the time. But he was he was a teacher by trade. And actually so was my father. And they both had a great way, and I can deal more with Brian because I dealt with him more in my professional life, how to give you life lessons, how to treat people, how to listen to people, how to empower your people, how to try to manipulate certain things that you want done the way you should be done. Brian Murray is one of the greatest humans that I've ever met. There's not enough words that can come on my mouth to praise Brian Murray. I wouldn't be the person that I am without Brian Murray today.
Is there a sense of wanting to do him proud? Is trying to take this?
Yeah, there is. But at the same way, Brian was a bit like my father, and he wanted you to learn by yourself. He'd always say, "Pierre, I'm here for advice, but you need to learn." I'll always remember one time I was so mad at the referees after a game. And I went to him, I said, "Okay, Brian, what do I do?" He goes, "Well, calm down." First, calm down, which was funny because he'd get very animated. And then he goes, "Wait the next day." And then, phone the supervisor and ask him how this went. Or just text him now and say, "Can I talk to you tomorrow?" And he had just a great approach about it, how to do things. And you always want to make him proud, but it wasn't a way that, I want to make him proud by what I'm doing. I just want to make him proud by being the best human being I can be.
He talks to you about what you're capable of doing and how to lead and how to kind of take, and yet there's still someone above. in terms of how to deal with ownership. Like there's still what you can fully believe is your decision and everything. And then what was he able to teach you about kind of understanding that at the end of the day, there's still somebody else?
No, but I think in Brian's case and my case, when it comes to Mr. Melnick, he lets us do what we need to do to make the hockey team better. He's always done that, as far as what I have to do. And at the same time, they're owners of teams, so obviously they'll want to know what's going on with their team. And, but I think both Brian and I do it in different ways. I think Brian was more on the phone with him, and I'm more via email with him. But at the same time, as long as you let him know what's going on in the team and how you're progressing, and, there are different situations. I think when Brian was there, they were more trying to, win the cup every year, have the best team. While right now we're in the process of rebuild, so the situations are a bit different.
They're incredibly different. Yeah, we can leave it there in terms of the situational differences between that. You have these wonderful discussions with. You're exposed to men who have lived and breathed this game, right? Going from what your father was like to then, studying and being under Brian Murray for a number of years. And then to kind of getting the go-ahead. Like for you, what was that call like to say, listen, we're giving you this position?
It was almost surreal. It was a few days before the end of the season, and Brian had decided that he was going to step down. And I had met with Mr. Melnick and Mr. Plenner just to give them, they wanted to talk about if I wanted the job or possibility of the job. And we talked for a few days, and I got the job, and it was almost surreal. What you started dreaming about in a short relative time frame, you achieve it. And you're the general manager of the Ottawa Senators, never played one game of pro hockey, wasn't talented enough to play one game of pro hockey, and you have full hockey control, and your job is to make the team as competitive as you can. So it was really it's a sensation that sometimes you can't even describe.
Are you looking for your dad at this point? Like,
it was
looking to...
I remember the day that I got named, you had the press conference. My daughter came with me at the press conference. My son was playing. I always remember he was in a Castleman tournament. And they got eliminated, so I couldn't make it there. But then I went with my daughter, and I said, what do you want? And she's a really good eater. She said, I wanted poutine today. I said, that's perfect. So I remember stopping, getting her poutine. I dropped her off at home, and then I went and visited my dad's tombstone. And I have a hard time going visiting my dad's tombstone. I can't go every year on his birthday or anniversary. I've gone maybe, it's been 20 some years now, and I've probably gone a handful of times because it's too tough for me. And I remember that day I went just to say, look I think what we've all accomplished here.
You took a little extra time there that day.
I did take a bit of extra time. A few tears might have been coming down too. So
that's pretty big, At this point, you have the kids. Mm-hmm. Your daughter's able to join you for this celebration. Is life rocky?
Yeah.
I mean, as one thing is excelling.
It's almost funny because as one thing's excelling, the other thing's degrading. At that point, I'd separated from. We separated in, I think, in 2015. We separated. Late 2015, we separated. Obviously, you get the job in 2016, got the job to be GM, and it's very tough. I remember telling her the toughest conversation I've ever had in my life. Probably was telling the kids. I'll always remember is October 23rd, 2015, that mommy and daddy were splitting up. And I remember telling my ex, I told her on September 15th, we got to tell the kids that we're not going to be together, and she couldn't do it. So I took the initiative at that point in time to do it. And then that was the toughest conversation I think I've ever had to do. And probably the second toughest one was telling Dave Cameron that he was relieved of his duties. Those are not easy conversations when you end someone's life in the NHL. And just to get back to the point of telling the kids, and then, I'm staying at Eric's place, a good friend of mine, just because you had to do it. We had to split up, and he was such a great friend in time of need. And I'm still working as assistant GM, trying to balance everything. My clothes are there, and you're trying to balance everything, and that's almost in disarray. But I never let it affect what I was doing professionally, which was good because the X was good for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sense of, for me, when someone achieves something that, and there was a support system through so many of the years, and then just at the brink of it all happening, there's not the ability to share in the joy of it.
No, but there's still some joy in it. I think she was happy for me. I think she was. And, I always felt bad because when I got named, you talk about your kids, you talk about your dad. I didn't talk about my ex, and I didn't talk about the current girlfriend. I didn't talk about either one of them, and I think both were mad at me, but, you can't win those things.
Yeah, that's a battle. You're just giving ammunition for more things on that, because they play incredible roles. Like the role of being there through the growth of the career and the scouting and the building and everything that got you to the point where you're at. And then someone else is there to experience a different side of you. Yeah,
but at the same time, one is probably more stressful, more demanding on a relationship. At times she'll come to the game and we'll talk about the 30-minute ride car back home, where I start talking about 29 minutes where I'm pretty mad if we lost for the first 29 minutes. So that can be tough on a human being too, when you take the losses so personally compared to...
Do you take it all incredibly personally?
Everyone I take so
There's
hard.
A lot of games in a season, Pierre, like that.
Every game, every loss, you pretty much take it like it's your own fault, which is wrong, which it shouldn't be like that. But every game is like it's your own personal loss. And when you were a scout, it was never like that. When you were a chief scout, you were never like that. When I was assistant GM, it was never like that. But I can tell you, as general manager, every loss eats at me inside. And even in a rebuild, even if you got a team that's trying to win the cup, whatever expectations are, people don't understand how much losses eat at me. And not that it's about me, but I'm sure it's like that with a lot of coaches in the NHL. It really takes me a full 12 hours to get back to some kind of normalcy.
It's a really crazy way to live.
I know.
It really is. I've just been given like the...
Yeah.
Did you see that? Like there's a couple of things that I want to get to, because I think that are important, and you've been so gracious in kind of being open and honest about things. There are hundreds of thousands of young kids playing hockey. The percentage of them making it into the NHL is so minuscule. But as a scout, as someone who knows the game, for parents to kind of instill in their children, for coaches, you have grassroots programs, like what are the basis? What is the foundation of what eventually people are going to be looking for as to why one child will stand out over another?
Well, obviously, there's always the basics. Like, and I know I'm being general with this answer. Skating, the game is becoming so much faster. And over the last 5 years, the game has become so much faster. So skating is always important. I think you have to have hockey sets to be able to read the play. Your puck handling skills have to be at a certain level. But people forget you have to have fun playing the game. Like,
would you say that the players that are in your room right now have fun playing that game?
This year, without a doubt. If you would say, let's say we've got 22 players in our dressing room right now, and you told them you're going to make all under $1 million to play hockey, I would guarantee you probably 20, and I'm just giving you a rough number, out of the 22 would play for a smaller amount of money if they had the choice, because they love the game. But it's the same thing at the grassroots level coming back. People have to have fun. Coaches have to make it fun. coaches have to make it fun for the players to come to the rink, whether it's boys or girls. Like my girlfriend's daughter plays hockey, and there's nothing more fun to go watch seeing her play and the enthusiasm and the girls watching. Like I tell everyone, I wish we could have more people playing hockey, and I wish the costs weren't that high. If I could change anything in the world of hockey, it'd be get as many kids playing, build as many arenas as possible, make the game thrive. It's a great game, you know, give out equipment, do all these things that you can to have as many kids playing as possible. That's what makes it such a great game. Like it's our national sport, and if we could find a way to just have as many people playing, it'd be the greatest thing ever.
You have accessibility, and so you have these kids playing, and slowly as they go through the ranks and as they get older, they're slowly dwindling down, those that are going to excel and those that are not. At what point is it like that 13, 14? Where is the character essential? Where is the selflessness, as you mentioned, is one of the things that you'd like to see? Where is this mostly developed so that these players have an ability, if they're good enough, to have the right mentality and move on?
I think it comes from within itself. It can be as early as your first year playing IP, where you work and you want to be the hardest working guy, or it can be as you mature and get older and figure it out that you have to work hard to stay at a certain level. Or the one thing where coaches have so much power is you can teach people how to work harder. You can teach people to be responsible. You can teach people the team concept. If there's one of the proudest moments ever was in spring hockey this year. My son, there was a 2-on-0 with an empty net, and he could have just put in the net and he passed it to someone else who he could get the empty net goal. To me, that's one of the proudest moments of my son that I've in my life, that it was just as selfless as that. And another time where I've been so proud, where I saw that unselfishness in him, we were in the Bell Capital Cup last year in the final. It was the third game. They lost 1-0. He got player of the game. He didn't deserve it. He took the medal and gave it to the goalie. He said, "You deserve player of the game." Like I'm more proud of that than this straight A's for my son. You know, that's unselfishness. That's being a team guy. That's where you're really proud of. But those things, I don't know if he would have done that when he would have been in Adam. But last year, he figured it out.
And are they still learning? You have young men that are 18, 19, 20, 21. This is the learning. This is where you want them.
Yes, you want them. They're developing. They're learning. You want these people. That's why you can draft so well. But if you don't know how to develop your players, you're never going to have success. And drafting character and surrounding with good people and having good, whether it's eating habits, sleeping habits, training habits, all these things are important in building the good foundation for a player when they get to be pro hockey players. But they can start doing it at a younger age too. So maybe not doing it at 5 years old when they're starting, but when they're around 14, 15, 16, so if they ever move on, but it can still teach you good life habits about sleeping well and eating well.
Can you still walk into a CJHL game and just go sit in the stands and look down and go, this kid, that kid? No?
Oh, no, I thought...
No, but could you...
Yeah, without a doubt.
Could you walk into an Nepean Raiders game...
Without a doubt.
Sit down in the stands and go, this kid?
Not in one game. The one thing about scouting is people think you can go see a player once. Obviously, you can go see Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid once and figure it out. But if you gave me 3 or 4 games, I could tell you this guy's going to play college hockey. This guy will play minor pro hockey. That guy, I think he'll play NHL. Within my level of evaluation, I could do that, no problem. But not under one game. That would be foolish. If anyone
couple of games, but you can distinguish. This is college bound. This is semi-pro.
Depending on their age, their potential, you always look at strength-wise, where they are physically mature, mental maturity.
Would you be honest to say this is realistic for you?
Oh, without
Say you've got the parent sitting next to you.
Oh, yeah, you have to. If you're asked your opinion to be, and I don't ever pretend to be, would ever want to be a doctor, but it's the same thing if a doctor was asking you to assess my child's whatever, and if a parent asks you, and I always tell them, do you want me to be politically correct or do you want to hear the truth? And for the most part,
They want to hear the truth.
They want to hear the truth. Sometimes they don't like it, but that's the way it is. Like sometimes, whomever it might be, you're asked, tell me what you think. You're at a major junior game too, where it's a 67s level, and they say, and I say, your kid better go to CIS because that's probably the highest level he'll go. So make sure he's good in school.
Have you ever asked someone for that assessment on yourself?
Oh, no. I think I'm a good self-evaluator. Sometimes I'm almost too critical on myself. So I think from a young age, I knew I wasn't going to be an NHL player. I was good enough to know. And as far as myself, I've seen an executive coach who's helped me as far as being the best leader possible. But I can evaluate one thing. Self-evaluation is good.
But for you to have sought out your own executive leader, your own coach, in a sense, to be able to say, "This help me be better at this."
Yeah,
that was important for you.
Yeah, help me be the best leader I can be, because at the same time, I'm the leader of the hockey operations for a big company. And
with thousands upon thousands of people watching your every move and every decision.
And it was about making sure that I could be the best leader, best decision maker.
What did you learn most then of meeting with that person?
Probably the thing I took away the most is that I wasn't a micromanager, but I always want to make follow-up on things to make sure they were properly done. Now I just tell people, get it done, and I empower to get it done. And if it's not done, then there are repercussions, but then I don't follow up on them. I think the best leaders, and I've loved reading about the great leaders of this world, some of them were very quiet in the background. Sometimes you have to be in the forefront because you're speaking, but in the background you let people do what they need to do to excel, and at the same time you empower them.
What sports story would have been the best sports story for you to read?
Best sports story I read, I remember reading something, I think it was Jimmy Johnson, and it was more about coaching, how he needed to treat his superstars in a different manner, but at the same time, I hope he treated him equally as everyone else. And I know that's a catch-22. I remember reading that, maybe 10 years ago it would have been. And it struck a chord with me that, okay, yes, you need to validate your stars, but at the same time, they need to be part of it, to know that they're part of a team.
But let's be realistic. That's a very difficult task.
Oh, it's extremely difficult.
Like, I would think if anyone can master that task.
Yeah, but he
to have your superstars and the mainframe.
I know he was a football coach, so if I'm off on who it was, maybe it was Vince Lombardi. I know I've read quite a few books about like great coaches and everything, but at the same time, you have to. Sometimes people who've had success, it's good to take some things from them. So, and there's other people that I've read. How they did things, and they manage people and manage staff, and it's always important to try to show the utmost respect to people if you want it back too.
Do you find that you have that back?
I think so. I think amongst my counterparts, I think I have a certain level of respect, but we're always trying to get the best of each other through deals or through player transactions. Amongst my staff, I've always tried to listen to everyone, and it's important sometimes. Sometimes people don't realize how many people that you have under you, as far as you might not have a lot, but it's time consuming to listen to every one of them. And I try to do that on a daily basis, and that can be a bit tiring. And you try to figure out sometimes people's agenda and why they want it a certain way. Well, when it's not the right way, but you learn from it, and you learn what people don't realize is that a lot of times when you're at the head of something there's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, there's not enough hours in this. I could keep going on too. At the end of the day, though, when you go to bed at night, what is your main what's your main goal? Like, what are you happy with? Like, if you had to do that gratitude thing, today I was happy for this, this, and this.
Well, I hope my
Tomorrow
girlfriend gives me a kiss before I go to bed. That's always a big goal of mine.
That you haven't pissed her off?
Yeah. That I do quite regularly, and not on purpose. I think there's always a saying, if you can get better every day. But me, it's about what, a lot of times before I go to bed, did I treat people the right way today? And more important, did I learn something that's going to make me better the next day? And a lot of times, okay, I'll go through my day, okay, and what was the thing that I didn't know yesterday that I knew today? And okay, and how is that going to help me moving forward? And sometimes it could be something so small, and sometimes the smaller things can be better in the bigger picture. And sometimes it's big, that something that, I learned that about, whether I learned this about the coach today, and I had no idea, and I've been working with him for 3 years, and it doesn't matter. And sometimes it can be, oh my God, I learned this about a certain player today, and it's a little thing, and it could be family oriented, or it could be on ice performance, and in the big scheme of things, it could change things really drastically. And that's why those are two things that, did I treat people well? And you always want to treat people well. Every fan that's come up to me in the last 3 years, except for one lady at the Sensplex who started shouting at me this year, I've always tried to take time for. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, and why are you a fan? And I always try to take time for people. And that was something that I learned from my dad when he used to get stopped in the streets in Toronto if we were there for something. And he'd take time for everyone, and I try to do the same.
It's a big job to take on.
Yeah. And the thing is you don't realize it, how so many people know you and you don't know them. And you just saying hi to someone can make their day, and when someone says hi, you say hi back, like you're a public figure in Ottawa, and I'm sure when you go to the grocery store, you get recognized. My daughter won't go to the grocery store with me anymore. She goes, Daddy, you take so many selfies and you talk to people, and who knew the ladies that did the groceries want to talk to you? And I said, that's just the way it is. She won't go with me anymore. So it's just something that I've learned to live with.
There's an appreciation. You're a general manager in a hockey market, in a Canadian hockey market. Yeah. There's a lot that comes with it. It's an everyday. Yeah. There's an everyday reminder, even when you're in the car and you're getting honked at and given the finger, which I thought was a very honest perspective of things. Last question. Yeah. Where do you hope? What would you like to see this legacy? What would you hope to leave with this organization?
Well, you always want to leave it in better hands, that you
in better shape.
Yeah, better shape that you inherited it in, but it was in pretty good shape when I took it over. So I'm not going to lie to you about that. You just want to always try to make the best move. You always want to, I think when you're a general manager, as much as you got to think short term, you always got to think medium and long term. And the one thing is that there hasn't been many days where I've waken up and haven't loved this job. And every day is a challenge, and you try to rise above it and make sure that you do the best for it. I know it's a really generic answer.
Well, it is, but there's not many of these jobs. There's only... There's some people that have the same job as you, right? Like
there's 31 jobs.
Yes.
I think there's 7
in Canada. See what happens with Seattle. Yeah.
There's 7 in Canada. There's 7 obviously where you get more recognized. It's funny when you talk to our American counterparts how our job is totally different. When we come out of GM's meetings in Toronto, for the most part, they want to talk to the 7 Canadian guys, and not as much the unless there's something brewing with a specific team. And it's a life that we live in, and I think we've grown to appreciate it. Actually, I've grown to appreciate it even more.
I really liked our chat.
So did I, actually.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention the K name. Look what makes him smile.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah, no, and no text from your friends going WTF. So I appreciate that, and encouragement. It's a great sport. It's an entrepreneurial mindset too, eventually, kind of as you, like, this really hits on everything. And it's nice to be able to see people getting out and enjoying the games. I think what I've liked to see, and I'll just say it, like, you know how you said the guys like being on the ice, like they would pay for less than $1 million.
Yeah.
It's been nice to see the change in the locker room, like that these guys want to play for each other. They have something to prove. And I think that makes that you want to root for a team like that.
Yeah, it's getting back to the point you were talking about originally about the underdog. We're the underdog this year.
But it brings people together. It brings players closer. Yeah, because they have something to prove.
And this is a close group of players.
Yeah,
like they all care about each other. It's great that you can witness that or assess that, because that's the way a lot of us feel this year.
It was funny. As I was heading in to do this podcast, Tony, you've met my husband.
Yes.
We were talking about kind of the All Blacks.
Yes, New Zealand.
Right, and you're talking about one of the winningest sports franchises, and how it wasn't always that way, and how they changed their charter of what the team needed to represent, who the players on this team needed to represent. And I think there was like one of the line, it was like, no dickheads.
Maybe we should have put that in our dressing room.
You got to appreciate a team that's got a charter like that.
Yeah, I really appreciate a team that has a charter. Honesty sometimes can be difficult to handle, but sometimes it's great.
Sometimes it's worked, and they've got a nice winning record. So there you have it. Pierre, thanks so much for taking the time. Leanne. I know now you got to jump on a train and you got to head to a game, and well, by the time this airs next Thursday, it won't. But for those that are listening, Pierre, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Best of luck with the new house as you have just moved into.
Yeah, moved in with my girlfriend. Yeah. It's great. Boxes everywhere.
Yeah. Let's see what it's like for the 29 minutes that she has to stay with you in the car, if there are the losses. But I like the perspective on things, and best of luck with everything. I appreciate it. And I know that you've listened to some of these podcasts, and so I want to remind you those that are listening, you can always subscribe, like, share, let people know what the podcast is all about. And that is a wrap on episode 44 of Living Your Life with Leanne Lang.